Hello. Welcome to the Unqualified Film Bros. This week is my week. We get Mulholland Drive. Um, like all of the movies that I watch, very slow and analytical. Or movies that, you know, you want to analyze. You don't need to, but you get a lot out of doing it. I love this film. I really love David Lynch's style. I've always thought it's extremely unique. Um, and he certainly has always had a great importance on dreams. And this, to a lot of people, was like his magnum opus. Some other people view other films as like his best film, but a lot of people will point to this, and this is one that's on most of the like Sight and Sound best films of all time. Same with like Vertigo and stuff like that. But yeah, so I'll start off with the question: what did the people watching it for the first time think?
Max, take it away.
Okay, yeah, I can start. Um, I actually did really like it. I think Ben, you're right. It is one of those films where, but I don't know if I agree. I think you kind of have to take a look at it and sort of take it slow. And so I did appreciate that. I know I'm going into a very fast-paced movie, so I think it was nice to slow my mind down a little bit. But yeah, no, overall, I thought it was really interesting. Love Naomi Watts. I always love her, so it's not really saying much, but yeah, I really did like it.
Yeah,
George.
I think slow burn is probably the best description you could give for a film like Mulholland Drive. Um, your two stories, the story between um, Betty and Rita doesn't overlap with the story with Justin Theroux's character until like an hour and a half into the movie. So it's almost like you're watching two films sort of intercut with each other for a while, which is, you know, you don't see that too often in film nowadays. Everything's very much laid out for the audience, pretty straightforward. So I think that that was a really nice creative choice. Love the editing, love the cinematography and the shot selection. I think technically speaking, it was just I mean the only thing that I can say is wow, as cliche as that is. But yeah, and then just from a story perspective and a performance perspective, I think that we got three really, really strong performances from the central cast. And then the idea that the first 80% of the movie was a dream. And then we get into the actual, why everything was what it was in the dream and why real life doesn't stack up to it. I think
Mm-hmm.
that is a great subversion of expectation for the audience. And, that's something that Ben, as you said, Lynch tries to lean into with his sort of storytelling style. So yeah, I think you know, it's the kind of film, Ben, you and I talked about this yesterday after I watched it. I need to see it multiple times to fully understand it, but it's something that I'm definitely down to watch again because I want to understand. I want to have a greater appreciation than just a first time viewing. Yeah, I liked it.
I think just like you said, the types of films that I've recommended are the films that really you get a lot out of rewatching them. I think that's probably why I like them so much, is because you can find something new, find a new perspective or whatever. And certainly for Lynch's films, he's always said some of it is supposed to, obviously have meaning, um, but some of it is supposed to just be more of an affect, a strangeness, but it can't be explained. And I think it really lends itself to stuff like the dreams. Dreams do not make sense. They're very scattered. Something starts and then something ends. And I think he really does a great job fitting the narrative in that scope of a dream. And even having like Justin Theroux's character, it works because she would be sort of dreaming about his downfall. There are all ways that the mind is sort of trying to cope with what she's done, what's happened to her. um They say dreams are a way of our subconscious dealing with problems. And so in her dream, she sort of compartmentalized it to a degree in a way that she can process it, in a way that she's no longer as bad of a person for killing her ex-lover, and their relationship is a lot more it feels better. She has an element of control which she didn't before, because she was no longer the star in real life. And yeah, and Justin Theroux just gets humiliated left and right. And I love that Lynch uses that also to say a bit about Hollywood, like the executive scenes, and even the guy in the back, basically, who says like one word or whatever. And the guy's like, "Oh, yes, you want that?" It's like you don't even know what they're saying, but it's this whole idea of the shadowy executives just messing around with the film. Nobody has any idea what they want. Nobody has any idea, you know, if they even understand the film, and they just run with it.
Yeah, it's yeah, it's so interesting because like you sort of get this one sense where nobody in that room actually knows what's good. And so it's really symbolized by the espresso because which is hilarious, by the way. Ben and I just watched that scene because it's so funny because like the guy's just like he spits it out, and I love when people spit things out. That's always so funny. Um like small children. And but like it's this, and they're like, what are you talking about? It's like this is like the most well-regarded espresso in the world. And it's like,
you have two responses actually, which is one of them is like shocked and like doesn't really know what to do. They're kind of in fear of this guy, and then the other one is like, what do you mean? I read all these reviews and everyone said it was the best. It's kind of, you can really allegorize that to movies.
and like you start to wonder like who's actually wrong. Like, are the reviews wrong? Are the guy drinking the espresso that spits it out, does he just not know espresso?
I think the idea is the guy drinking the espresso is going to hate any espresso. That's why he asked for the napkin, because he's so picky that nothing will satisfy him, which is kind of some people with movies.
It's a lot of people with movies.
You just can't satisfy everybody. But I like that there is some of that weaves in like almost seamlessly with the actual dream that Diane's having, the actual Diane, Naomi Watts' character. I think he does so much without like stopping anything. Like you said, it does seem like it's two movies, but it flows. It never feels like something stopped.
Yeah, each narrative continues at a pretty steady pace throughout the first two acts of the film, and I think that works to the film's benefit, Ben, as you said, where we can see the stories of these three characters as they're happening. It's not, taking a break from one story for 40 minutes to go catch up with the other story. It's, one scene here, one scene there. We are keeping up with these characters as their stories continue. And then, in the first act, you get the vignette almost with Patrick Vischler's character in the diner talking about his dream that he's terrified will come true, with the being scared in the diner, and the guy he's there with is also there, and then they go out back and they see this terrifying face, and then everything that is there comes true, or everything that he describes in the dream comes true when they walk out of the diner. And watching this movie for the first time, I didn't really see how that connected until the reveal with half an hour left that Diane was dreaming this whole narrative with Rita and amnesia and Betty coming to Hollywood for the first time. It was all a dream. And to see, looking back on that first scene with the description of the dream and then it coming true, that's almost like foreshadowing. It's sort of, telling the audience that dreams and reality are often blurred in cinema. And I think the reveal at the end of the film allows us to see that Lynch was playing with that concept the whole time.
I particularly like that because it doesn't seem to fit, but if you think about it some more, and once you realize it is a dream, it really does work on many levels. On one level, like I said, Diane is trying to process everything that she's done. So it makes her feel like maybe if she's dreaming all this stuff and her life is so much better and Diane is with her, that it can come true. But of course, the reality is that dark side, and that's why his dream is dark. That's the bit of reality that seeps in to the dream, because that diner, as is later revealed, is where she pays the hitman to kill Camilla. So that evil, like whatever that is behind the walls in the back,
The gremlin.
yeah, it's her secret. That's her guilt. That's her own like subconscious guilt that's sort
Well,
of trying to come out.
that sort of emerges too when Betty and Rita go to Diane's apartment and they see the dead body on the bed. It's like, well, that hasn't happened in the story yet, but it's an idea of darkness and reality, Diane's darkness and reality invading the idea of her dream. So
Yeah,
you're right that there are these moments that hint to the audience that not all is right in this world.
to escape from that too. I'd love that she wants everything to be happier than it is. Even the hitman. I love the scene where they show the hitman killing all those random people. Right? It's sort of a humorous scene. Even though tons of people are dying, it's framed as like this, comedy of errors, supposed to elicit sort of humor rather than the dark actual reality of killing someone. Um, you know, it's how she wants it to be, how she frames it, and maybe he misses, or maybe she doesn't actually die, or there's so many things that could go wrong, but it's her guilt sort of coming in, and I often view that like these breaks where you see the other people, that's sort of the invasion of her actual reality, where you see the hitman, where you see the guy at the diner. It all sort of it's just all this darkness in her guilt that just coming out. But that's my interpretation.
Yeah, when I finished watching the movie and I was a little confused as to, first she was Betty, then she was Diane, Naomi Watts, and there wasn't really an explanation for it. I kept wondering, is this a doppelganger? How is this going to connect? And then I had to like read about the film afterwards, and everything sort of came together for me when I could figure, because I didn't realize initially that it was a dream. I sort of missed that.
If you watch the movie again, you will notice that the very first shot is bed and quickly goes dark. Someone falling on their pillow. It's a quick shot, but he does put it in there. I think it's pretty smart because it doesn't really mean anything to a first viewer, but it does.
Yeah, I feel like
It
I feel like I'm gonna get so much more out of this on a second viewing.
but yeah,
Yeah, George, I did the same thing. I did some reading after, and I was reading about the 10 clues or something that he put like on the DVD or something. And so I'll have to go back and look for all of them
Mhm.
because there's no way that I probably caught maybe like 3 or 4 of them, maybe on the first viewing, but that was just luck. I mean, I think I have to go back.
I mean,
Yeah,
I missed most of the clues too. I
yeah,
understand the reveal though. I understood what was going like
yeah.
the situation was when they revealed it. I just didn't pick it up beforehand.
Mhm.
I think, yeah, I mean, my interpretation of the whole thing is I guess it's sort of cut and dry with Justin Theroux's character, and why he's like made to feel embarrassed is because he's obviously the one that Camilla's actually in love with. She wants to kill Camilla because Camilla's making basically, abusing her control and her power over her by making her feel like insignificant, like drawing her in and then just, embarrassing her. But the whole reason that she wants to be Camilla is because she wants to be a star. That's the beginning of this. She wants to be in Hollywood. And that's sort of the dream aspect too, is everybody goes to Hollywood with dreams. And the reality is much worse than they anticipated. Hollywood is much worse, even with like Justin Theroux's character, just seeing how they dismantle his movies. But she wants to rationalize it. Like the only reason that she can't get the part is because he's being, influenced by all these executives. People are out to get him, like this mob or whatever.
The woke
the
mob.
cowboy that like intimidates him. So there's all these like random things that don't make any sense, but she wants it to be there to like have a rationalization as why she didn't get the main part, why she's not the star. Yeah, there's a lot of ways that you can read into the dream, but I think that's sort of fitting for a dream. Most people don't have one answer. You can get something out of your own dreams, but obviously there's a lot of things that you can get out of your own dreams.
The other thing I really liked about this sort of sequencing between and the way they really play with the sequencing of her Hollywood story, right? And we start from what was ultimately her past, which was not literally her past, but what was ultimately her past, which was going to Hollywood with a dream, like her Betty imagined character does, is sort of how the behavior of the old people is. Like at the beginning they are so like they're encouraging, they're optimistic, they're excited for the future, and then at the end they're just predatory and all twisted, as her Hollywood dreams are, and they're sort of a symbol of her dying spirit, that started out so optimistic and hopeful, and ultimately those are the or that is like the real harbinger of her end, is like once she really recognizes that, and I think that was symbolic of her truly realizing that this has become something perverted, twisted, that is now dead and buried. And I think that was truly the moment where she realized that it was all over. Because it was that, because then she literally shot herself. So, well, yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, she shoots herself because old people come out of the cage or the box.
Yeah, but I feel
they come out of underneath the door.
I feel like it's more about what the old people represent. What the old people represent that caused her to shoot herself.
Yeah, my interpretation is, so the old people are the people that she says goodbye to when she first enters LA in her dream. That's important. That's the beginning of the dream. And they come out. That dream begins with her basically hiring a hitman to kill someone. And that's the piece of reality that's coming out. That guilt that she can't dream away, that she can't delude herself away, that she actually killed the person that she was in love with, that horror. And that's, they start coming towards her, and sure, it's kind of scary, but it's like a visualization of her guilt coming into the real world. That's no longer the dream, and she can't escape it in dreams, so she shoots herself.
See, I thought they were more about the sort of destruction of all of her optimism and reason for living, and in many ways it's sort of an amalgamation of her guilt and her destroyed dreams potentially. But I think that that was sort of my read of it.
I think they are the same people from the beginning,
right?
Yeah, Chip, you bring up a good point about the sort of dichotomy between their presentation in the beginning and the end of the film, where they represent two different sides of Diane. and the beginning is very much the Betty that she wants to be, and trying to hold on to why she started doing this in the first place, and what she wants, as
I think
the dream of dreams in terms of hope for making a career in film and acting and all of that. And then the presentation at the end of the film where they're literally driving her to put a bullet in her head. It's that it's kind of obvious presentation, but it's worth noting how the presentation shows her ultimate deterioration in a mental state.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that, like, the beginning of the dream is not necessarily like who she wants to be. It's what she wants to be in right now. It's bliss, it's ignorance. um it's not like ignorance to Hollywood as much as ignorance to the fact that she is now a murderer and killed the person that she loved. That's a horrific idea.
You're not supposed to do that.
No, that's no good. But I really love, she says in the beginning that her grandmother left her some money, also an old person. So I sort of think it's also kind of her guilt at that she used her grandmother's money that she left her to kill her. That's where she gets all that money from.
Yeah, that's bad.
She didn't have money, remember? She was left money.
Mhm.
So the old person coming out is also like to symbolize where she got that and where it was transferred to.
So Ben, I got a question for you.
Mhm.
And Chip, this also goes to you because the two of you had a conversation on Twitter like a year ago talking about this movie and how we wanted to do it on the pod, and now we're doing it tonight. But what puts this movie on your Mount Rushmore of film? Like, why are we talking about this movie on the pod tonight?
Well, I did spare you from a few. It's tough to like choose my top ones, but this is definitely in there. And I choose it primarily because, first of all, I love psychological thrillers.
So do I, yeah.
And I love the ingenuity. This is a very unique movie. Nobody does Lynch like Lynch. I mean, to take a neo-noir approach, he sort of does a similar thing with Twin Peaks earlier on in his career, but it's a mystery. It isn't a mystery. Your neo-noir mystery is going into the psyche of someone. Now, noir films have always dealt heavily in the psychology and the character of people that you're investigating. And he uses that in Twin Peaks to basically never solve the murder and just delve into people's lives. But this one is just very clever. Your mystery is all in a dream. And all the pieces, you're basically going through someone's mind and trying to figure out what everything means. Why is this here? What happened? So you are the detective in a way. But it's just incredibly clever framing. The movie is shot amazingly. It's edited amazingly. Fantastic acting in it. And I personally love Billy Ray Cyrus in the movie.
That was a little jarring when he
Yes,
showed up.
And it's yeah, it's supposed to be like, it fits so well because it's a dream. I mean, even the way that he reacts, his wife is upset that he came home. He's like, "What are you doing here? Get out of my house!" After he comes home to find his wife is cheating on him. It's like all this reverse, things that don't really make sense, but it just all fits together perfectly, and you can get something out of it every time. You can really analyze a certain part of it, analyze a certain character. You can even go way more into the Hollywood side of things and critique that. But it just has so many angles to look at. Like a good book, you can really think about it for a while.
Yeah, that's that. My answer is a lot of that. I also really do like. I really love psychological sort of sort of pseudo suspense kind of films. Um, but what I really love about it is, you know, it sort of scratches a particular itch for me, which is like I love a reveal that sort of ties, because you lay a bunch of puzzle pieces out onto the table, and I really do love a sort of a tight reveal that is both enriching and fulfilling to the character, um, that is psychologically and emotionally compelling, but that also sort of ties all these disparate threads together in a really neat way that sort of makes you think about it just sort of makes you think about, you know, how this how it's so simple, but it makes you really think a lot about how it all fits together and what it means. And I guess that's just sort of a long-winded way of saying it's just very mentally stimulating. um and I think that like it has to fit together and it has to be organized in a way that all of the layering sort of lines up when you stack it onto itself, to be that. But it really does line up, and it just all of that, it is such a deep story, it's so layered, but all of these different layers line up with some other part of the story that on the surface is so different. But it's not so abstract as to not make sense, because like you can always be abstract and say, oh, this means this, and you're like, okay, but like it doesn't feel like it does. But that's not the case in this film. It feels like it does, even though on the surface it, like the demon, homeless, dirty person being, representation of her guilt. Like you can always put something out and say this is a representation of X, but it really feels like it, especially given the setting of the diner, given the sort of creeping dread, um, of the figure lurking in the background and always being pictured behind the wall, and then all of a sudden stepping right into that guy's face, which is ultimately what the end of the film is. Um, it just man, it's just neat. I don't know. It's just all it scratches an itch that I didn't really know I had going into before I started watching films like it. And I do think that it is one of the best at doing this particular thing. And that's why it's got to rank so highly for me, is because it is, a concept I love at its peak.
Yeah, it's, as I said, nobody does Lynch like Lynch. He loves, to do these surrealist styles and stuff, and it fits. It's very visually stimulating. It's mentally stimulating, but it's also, he does incredible things. Choosing his editors and his cinematographers, he really gets shots that they're Lynchian angles and Lynchian shots. People have studied this stuff and tried to recreate it, but he just has such a uniqueness to him. Movies can feel very similar. None of his films feel, they have Lynch's, DNA in them, but they're completely different from anything else you'll see.
Yeah, you talk about, Chip, I think you mentioned being mentally stimulating. This is a film that is truly compelling in a way that you can't break your concentration. You need to
Mm-hmm.
be watching 100% of the time, because you will miss something and it'll probably be something important. For a story like this, and really for stories like this, because of how they're presented in the first two acts, you know, paying attention is essential, sure, but the complexity of the narratives with all of the different layers that are, you know, setting up the next concept and setting up the execution of the next phase of the story, you're really, you know, seeing the story unfold in a truly unique way in this film. And one thing that I've sort of learned in my amateur writing, as I try to write a, goddamn mystery story, is that, yeah, it's good to know where the thing ends, but at the same time, I'm trying to write in sequence, and this shit's hard. to make sure that you've got setup and payoff and layers and complexities and character dynamics that work to essentially build a puzzle. And what Lynch does with Mulholland Drive is expertly puts that puzzle together in a way that doesn't necessarily walk the audience through holding their hand saying, all right, this step and this step and this step, but rather here's an idea of where we're going next. Here's the next step, and not just boom, 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 boom. So we get a guide without, someone having their hand on the back of our shirt pushing us through the crowd.
Yeah.
It's almost a helpful narrative rather than a, blatant narrative.
Yeah, it's definitely yeah, it's just clever. What was I gonna say? I was gonna tag on something, but I can't remember what that is. So yeah, I guess anybody have any last thoughts?
Yeah, you two have been pushing for me to watch this movie for a long time. I'm glad I did. It's worth it.
Yeah, I'm too. I like didn't really know what to expect kind of going in because I heard about it and seen clips and everything, but it was never really on my list. Um, I think there were a couple of other Lynch films on there that probably were higher on my to watch list, but I'm glad we did this one. I think I might have to watch Dune, and then
We did do.
Twin Peaks.
It did. Yes, it did.
David
All
Lynch
right.
is Dune from the 80s. Yeah, it's
It's-
we got to
it's-
get Dexter to talk about that one.
It's something, man.
He's got some thoughts.
Some people really like it, and it is kind of, he did a lot to try and make it authentic, and yeah, it's just there's not enough budget there, and
What, they couldn't afford sand?
there's a lot more sand in it. But yeah,
Ben.
it's something.
Ben, you got to keep winning funky films because between Blade Runner and Vertigo and this, I'm seeing films that I probably would have gotten to eventually, but like I'm being led in a direction to sort of think three-dimensionally about each of them and not just watch them to watch them. It's really it's forcing, and I mean forcing in the best possible way, sort of a mental acuity that is required to sort of dig deeper and want to learn more, not just about storytelling but about filmmaking. So these three that you've picked win again. I'm looking forward to the next one.
Well, that's what I like. I mean, these are things that the more you use that part of your brain, the easier it'll get, the more you'll see, the different things you'll see. But it's definitely it's sort of like trying to think of a book, like any classic
Cat in the
literature. No, not quite like that, but
Yes, Chip, that is a book.
like that's very the writing is not crazy good. It's just like a fun book, like Tom Clancy or something like that. Versus like the Great Gatsby or Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner or whatever, where you need to active read. You really need to like read into it because you're not going to get a lot out of it. If you a Great Gatsby, you'd get a little bit more because there's just plain story there. But Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, like you got to read into it. Otherwise, you're going to be like, what the hell is this man on?
Yeah, what's this mariner up to?
Killing birds.
You're not supposed to kill the seagulls.
You're not supposed to do that. Bad luck. But yeah. So I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. I'll think on what one next to pick if I win.
I can't believe I missed the Vertigo one because Ben and I just watched it like last week.
Yeah,
it's so good.
You finished it without me.
Yeah,
so.
But now we're on a cock marathon. We're watching Psycho tonight.
Oh my god! All right.
I don't think Hitchcock has ever been called that before. So
yeah.
Chip's making history here.
Actually, he has been called a cock many times, probably.
Oh, I'm sure, but never that lovingly.
Yeah. But yeah, anyway, this
Fondly.
is Mulholland Drive. Well, next week is Mission Impossible, which I think Max is going to do right now. So we'll let him know
Which theater are you seeing it at?
that. Shh,
Georgetown.
Oh, nice.
we can't dox ourselves.
Oh,
So find him.
they're gonna find us.
Yeah.
Mission
you don't-
Impossible is so good.
You don't think there are people
I
that
can't wait.
people want to find more than us in the capital of the planet?
I don't know, man. We're easy to find now.
Oh well, because I doxed us.
All right. Well, we'll see you next week.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah.